one person, well, there's two people. One person's not with us anymore. But there's only two really people who knew what really happened out there. And he, the defendant, made sure that other person couldn't come into this courtroom and tell you what happened. He, the defendant, silenced Trayvon Martin. But I would submit to you, even in silence, his body provides evidence as to this defendant's guilt. And why do I say that? Because from DNA, from lack of blood, other stuff, his body speaks to you, and even in death, that, and it proves to you that this defendant is lying about what happened. Do you recall one of the things we talked about at some point with one of the witnesses, I think was Dr. DeMaio, a very impressive, distinguished doctor, about this photograph the defense keeps parading? Recall what I did? I said, what do you expect? Blood. And I'm going to show you the photographs. Not just at the medical examiners because they're saying, oh, that Dr. Bao, he's incompetent, he didn't know what he was doing. No, I'm going to show you the photographs at the scene, which show what? No blood in his hands. Now they're going to say, oh, it was raining that night. Wow. And I guess the blood on the defendant's head just stuck there, right? But on the victim, they just kind of vanished. Can't have it both. Can't have it like that. See, because what's important is the defendant, in an attempt to convince the police that he was really shooting this man, this boy, in self-defense, he had to exaggerate what happened. That's why he had to at some point say, oh, he was threatening me. It was almost like the levels of fear escalated. And we'll talk about that. How he was, then originally he hit him, and then he got him on the ground, and then there was a struggle, and then he got the upper hand, and then, let's see, it got worse, and then he threatened to kill him, and then he put his hand over his mouth, suffocating him, and he pinched his nose, and then he went for the gun. See how he's exaggerating everything? Oh, you don't believe this stuff? Well, hold on, it was even more dangerous. Because you know why? This defendant, as you heard, has studied the law in terms of what's required for self-defense. And he's got all those bullet points in terms of what's required. So, if you take one word out of here that I would submit to you shows this defendant's guilt, it's assumptions on the part of the defendant. The defendant assumed that the victim didn't belong at the retreat of Twin Lakes, didn't he? That the victim was committing or about to commit a burglary. He assumed and he profiled the victim as a criminal. One of those that always got away. He assumed also that he was an and again, assuming something is not against the law by itself. Unless you're wrong. Well, let's assume at that time he legitimately thought that Trayvon Martin might be committing a crime. Okay, he called the police, non-emergency number. It's a good thing. But what did he do? He didn't, when this victim is coming up to him and he claims circling his car, like, what are you doing, man? What are you following me for? He didn't say, hold on, I'm sorry, I'm with the neighborhood watch. Or do you, can I assist you in some way? You look lost, or you look like you don't know what's going on. Can I help you? Can I give you a ride? Or let's say he was scared of him, but he could have said, do you live around here? Can I call the police? Can I call a friend? He didn't do that. He didn't take any action because he already in his mind had assumed that he was a criminal, and he wasn't going to give him any benefit of the doubt. He rolled down the window and identify himself as a neighborhood watch. Just say, listen, I've called the police. I'm not a bad guy. I'm not a pervert. I'm not following you for anything, whatever your name is. But you mind waiting? The police are on their way. They're going to be here in about 30 seconds or a minute. Sometimes they take a little bit longer. But would you mind waiting here? I'm a little suspicious of what you're doing. Would you mind waiting? He didn't do that. Did he wait for the police? No. Did he wait inside his car? No. Did he let the victim know he wasn't a weirdo? No. So let's talk about weighing the evidence. In terms of what the instructions, the court will give you an opportunity to see and know. Were the answers that the witness gave straightforward? Did anybody have an interest in the outcome? And did the evidence agree with the other evidence? Are there prior inconsistent statements? And again, use your God-given common sense. What do we have here? Really, what does it boil down to? You heard a little bit, and we put evidence of the fact the defendant at one point wanted to be a police officer. I've been in law enforcement 30 years, prosecutor. There's nothing wrong. That's a good thing. We ought to encourage people to be police officers. That's an honorable profession. He applied in Virginia, didn't get in, and then he's doing other stuff. He's taking criminal justice credits. That's good. But again, it doesn't say that the law allows a person to take the matters into their own hand. If not, why are we here? Why do we have courtrooms? Why do we have jurors? Let's just let people handle it outside. Oh, they're wrong. Well, sorry. So I want to talk about the witnesses. And before I do that, I want to take a moment to thank you for your time and service. I think we started over 4 weeks ago in this process that we're all so fortunate to be able to live in, live the Constitution in terms of asking people to come from their everyday lives and give up a lot, and from work and from family, to serve as jurors. So I think I speak on behalf of everybody, defense, the court, and everybody. We thank you for your time and your patience. This case is very important to the state of Florida. It's important to the victim's family. It's important to the defendant. And it's also important, obviously, to you. You probably realized that as you all are watching the witnesses and watching the trial, periodically the attorneys will watch you, and the court will. And you guys were very attentive. Some took more notes than others. But without a doubt, nobody was falling asleep. And, it's a long process. But I want to take a few moments and talk about what I would submit is how you arrive at a verdict. We ask in this great country for people to serve as jurors without really any legal experience. In a lot of countries, they have lawyers or judges that are already automatically plugged in as such, and that's what they do. They have professional people that sit as jurors. We ask people to come from their everyday lives and sit as jurors. That's what I would submit makes this country great. So how is it that if you're asked to come and you really don't have any legal experience, how do you arrive at a verdict that speaks the truth? How do you arrive at a verdict that is just? I would submit to you to 3 things. Number 1, you rely obviously on the witnesses, the testimony, the evidence, that you'll have the physical evidence that you saw, and you'll be able to digest more if you want to, the recordings, all that other stuff. Number 2, you rely on the law that Judge Nelson will read to you, and you'll actually be provided a copy of. And number 3, and perhaps most importantly, you rely on your God-given common sense. That common sense that we just kind of use automatically without even having to think about it to make decisions at home and at work. The law encourages you to do that in evaluating the evidence, determining what's valid, what's not, and what makes sense. And when you do those 3 things, when you rely on the witness's testimony, the physical evidence, and other stuff, when you rely on the law, and then when you rely and apply your common sense to you, I would submit to you, you come back with a verdict that speaks the truth, a verdict that is just. And that verdict would be that this defendant is guilty of murder in the 2nd degree. Do you believe that there is an innocent man sitting over there right now? Do you believe that he just assumed something, but he kind of overreacted a little bit, but it really wasn't his fault? that Trayvon Martin is dead?